So hello all and welcome to the Rhodes 2.0 training. We're going to go over the new changes in Rhodes 2.0 as well as going over building an application. We're going to discuss how to use Rhodes, how the new features added in 2.0 work with Rhodes, how the new row sync is formatted, and the basic steps needed to generate an application. So everyone should have Rhodes installed, the Rhodes 2.0 beta gem. And to begin, generating application works just as you would with 1.x. You would see here you would generate using the Rhodes command. So we will say Rhodes app store. The generator generates our basic file structure here. So we will go to this application and we're going to create two models for our store. We're going to generate a product model with the attributes name, brand, price, and quantity. And we're also going to generate a person model. They're going to have first, last, email, phone, address, city, state, and zip. So once we've generated that, we now have our application with the two models. So we'll open up our text editor here and take a look at this application. So the file structure of your Rhodes application has not changed. You still have the public folder, the icon folder, and your app folder. Inside your app folder, you have your models here, so you can see we have person and product. And we still have our index.erb. So we'll open that up. One thing you'll notice is that this index.erb is much different than previous versions. We've changed everything with the new CSS layout, which will make everything quicker and look good across all platforms. You have your title here in the page title div, the toolbar, which is rendered differently per platform to look native for each platform. And you can have left item and right item in your toolbar, which corresponds to left and right buttons at the top of the screen. And then inside your content, you can have your lists here. So since we added two models, we're going to create links to those models. So first we have our product model. And we will change this to products. We're going to copy this section and create one for our person model, and go ahead and save this file. Once we've done that, we can go back to our terminal here, and we're going to run this for iPhone. This is going to call the local build process and display our application and load it into our iPhone simulator. It has now created these links as the last step. Previously, you had one rowlog.txt for your iPhone. However, with latest changes in the iPhone simulator, you will now have a link to each version of the iPhone hardware. So you can see it's been created. There's Rowlog 3.0, Rowlog 3.1.2, 3.1.3, etc. Now that the build process is finished, we can go look at our application. And you can see the two links we've created, as well as the new styles that we have. If we select one of these, you can create your new products as you would previously. We'll go ahead and create one now. We can also go back to our home screen and add a person. All this process is very similar to what we have done in Rhodes 1.x. The main change here has been our CSS style sheets, which no longer use JavaScript, it's just pure CSS, which creates applications that run faster and load faster. If we take a look at our file structure here, inside our person model, we have several files now. What you'll notice is missing is the config.rb, which used to be used to configure your configure the way that your model would sync. That's been replaced by our explicit model, which starts out basically as the property bag. So the initial behavior has not changed, but the way that we configure it has changed. Another thing you will notice is that we now have two sets of files for each view here. One that is an index.erb, one that is an index.bb.erb. These files are for BlackBerry builds, and any file you can use can be done for any specific platform by adding that platform as a second argument here. So index.bb.erb will be used when you're running on a BlackBerry. Index.iphone will run on iPhone. Index.android would run on Android, etc., etc. The reason why this is done is because the views and the HTML capabilities of the different devices are slightly different. So if you notice in our BlackBerry index page, we're using a table, while in our main index page, we're using a list. That's because on BlackBerry, the tables are able to be styled better than a list would be. So taking a little closer look at our model here, we can look at the ROM page. The ROM model in 2.0, we now give you the option to have a fixed schema as well as the property bag model. The property bag model is how 1.x worked, and all the objects were stored as object value pairs in the database. By default, everything is done local on the device. So if you do not explicitly set sync, all models will be not synced at all. To enable sync, you just add the command here, enable sync, which is pretty simple. And then there's different types of sync that we have now. There's a bulk sync, which is used for very high data sets. If you have a large amount of data, it will do all of the processing on the server and then send the database file over instead of sending the data and having it processed, which is very helpful if you have several megabyte data set. Sync priority just sets the orders that the models that are sent in. So as you can see by that comment here, 0, 1, 2, etc. will sync in that order. To specify a blob, you have to explicitly identify that property as a blob. So for example, if we have image capture, we would set the image URL to blob in our model to identify to the sync server and to the syncing code that this is a blob. In 2.0, we now support a fixed schema where you specify your object properties explicitly. So instead of using a property bag, you have to identify them explicitly and the data types explicitly. And if you add more properties, you must explicitly put them in your model. So you can see here, you can have a version for the schema, which allows you to do migrations. And here we set name, tag, phone as strings, and image URL as a blob. We can specify indexes and unique indexes. We will go over more about how the CSS framework works. You've seen how it looks on iPhone. We'll now do an Android build, which is accomplished by doing rake run Android. This will do a build and load it in our Android simulator. Starting up the Android emulator. So the Android emulator is a little different than the iPhone emulator. It's a little slower to start up, and it takes the APK files directly. So if you have this APK file, you can build one in production mode and deploy it directly to the device, as well as test on the simulator. So when the build is available and will be ready, it'll say success. So you can see in our terminal here in the background it says loading is complete, you may now run the application. So we can go in here and find our store. So you can see this looks like a native Android application. It's the same HTML code, just a different styling. We also have our products link. We can create a new product here as well. And so it has the same basic features as our iPhone application. You may notice this is a huge improvement over the 1.x styling. And it is using the same CSS as we did in the iPhone build. Same HTML, using the same style sheets but with Android specific code. So those are the main changes to the structure of an application. You still have your config, rowconfig.txt. Your basic folder layout is the same. The models are now defined explicitly, and you are able to set a fixed schema as well as a property bag schema. So next we're going to talk about more of the device features and specific features that have been added in Rhodes 2.0. The first is we have a native bar. So if we take a look at our Rhodes page here, we can find our native bar. So if we do a search, we can see native bar control. In your application.rb, you can now set the back, forward, separator, home, basically all the different actions and icons that you want. And in this will cause the different rendering in the toolbar. So if you take a look at our emulator here, this affects this navigation bar here at the bottom on the Android. And on the iPhone, it affects this native bar here at the bottom. So let's go in our application now and try and change that. Go back to
Are we going to have breaks for exercises where we stop and then they do stuff?
So continuing on with our native bar, it is set in the application.rb. We can see here, let's just copy from our wiki example here. We have a back forward separator. So we'll go ahead and give that, we'll go ahead and copy that. Define our toolbar. Make sure that these image files exist. So let's go ahead and look in our public images. We don't have those, so let's pick an image to use. Well, there's one called back button, so we'll go ahead and use that one. There's one called blue button, so we'll go ahead and use that one. And then we'll save this. So now we'll go back to our terminal and we will run our iPhone application again. It's going to do a rebuild of the application and relaunch the simulator. Since we did this once already, this is now going to be much faster. We'll go ahead and open our store. So we can see where it has changed the native bar and tried to stick in the images. Our images obviously were not very good here, so we came with blank squares. If we want to remove some of these things, like we don't want a home, we don't want refresh, we don't want options, we don't even want the separator here, we'll just leave those two. We can go and relaunch our application. And you can see now that the other buttons here have been removed.